From the rubble of the failed industrial world comes a mystical cult of sensuous she-warriors, risen from the ruins of dead technology.
(1975) brought us Rollerball, which is really the first out of a short-lived fad of science fiction rollerblade movies. But it wasn't really until the mid-80s that we got a small slew of these kind of science fiction movies that compared sci-fi elements with roller skates or rollerblades. And we are talking about one of these called Rollerblade. Now, note the gap between the word roller and blade, not to be confused with actual rollerblades, just for copyright reasons. The man behind this was Donald G. Jackson, who actually directed and produced a number of kind of rollerblade sci-fi movies. This is but one of them, all of which are fairly incomprehensible, but we'll talk about it a little bit in a minute. So, 1986, this one stars Suzanne Solari. Has a couple of kind of recognisable kind of B-movie screen queens, and is a bizarre post-apocalyptic movie, as they all tend to be fair. So we have Los Angeles, obviously the post-apocalyptic version of Los Angeles, and we have essentially this world now which is, you know, your somewhat kind of standard post-apocalyptic society, but we really focus on two kind of factions, so to speak. We have the strange kind of sisterhood of roller skating nuns, who are the kind of the de facto good guys, so to speak, led by Sister Speed. And then we have kind of like these bad guys who look like kind of Mexican wrestlers, and we have like a Lord Humongous kind of style sort of character who has an interesting gimmick, that's all I'll say. Anyway, we have the story here where there is a kind of a gem which is ultimately going to give power, and the kind of the bad guys essentially coerce this woman to try and join this sisterhood and ultimately kind of steal this gem for them. Now, she kind of tries to infiltrate them, but maybe she's kind of feeling a little bit of a connection. Maybe she feels part of the group. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what worked with this movie. Quite honestly, not a lot genuinely worked with this film. It is pretty incomprehensible, as I've said, but it is a strange, weird film that is very much of its time, and as such it does evoke some type of weird fascination to watch it kind of these days, where you can kind of watch this ironically and just be entertained by the sheer craziness that is on screen, yet where we have, you know, women rolling around with rollerblades, tackling kind of like luchadors, getting in fights, getting their clothes ripped off, which happens quite regularly in this movie. It's bizarre. Healing people with kind of like a butterfly knife, yeah. Weird kind of like puppet monsters, yeah. It's a really bizarre film. I have to say, you know, it does kind of. I mean, I had this on VHS when I was young. And I actually kind of quite liked it, to be honest with you. Watching it now, though, whew, yeah, it's a tough one, and we're gonna talk about all of that. But nonetheless, it is visually, you know, quite interesting in places. The nuns kind of wearing these kind of red hoods with kind of, as I say, the iron cross on them, which kind of evokes kind of Nazi imagery and stuff. You're thinking, are these the good guys? Because they look kind of oppressive, to be honest with you. So, you know, I was wondering where all this kind of these ideas come from. It seems like a whole kind of mishmash of ideas. Everyone kind of speaks, well, the good guys, the kind of the nuns and their kind of allies, these kind of like little police force and stuff, almost talk like they're reading Shakespeare, or at least kind of like trying to have that kind of aesthetic in regards to their kind of speech patterns and stuff. So it's a bizarre mix, and kind of there's some weird kind of costume designs. Okay, I quite like the costume designs. Let me say that. They're cheesy, yes, but I quite like the costume designs, and it's fun in a kind of an ironic way. That's just about as best as I can say about this film, because legitimately this is one of the most poorly put together films you could really find. it's just a mishmash. And I watched one of the other kind of Donald G. Jackson films, Rollerblade 7, and it was pretty much the same thing. It was incomprehensible. The storyline is just so all over the place. The editing is atrocious. It just kind of flicks to kind of scenes of supporting characters doing kind of random things that have little or nothing to do with the actual kind of main story. I'm assuming to kind of pad out a running time here. They obviously didn't pick up much audio whilst they were filming this, because there's a hell of a lot of really kind of poor ADR here. The story, yeah, I mean, this is pure B-movie slog, don't get me wrong. You know, you can obviously poke holes in any kind of like story elements here about people are so just like, oh, they haven't got their roller skates. That means they're essentially their life is over and things like this. I mean, we could just delve so many rabbit holes, poking holes at the silliness and the kind of the ideas that this movie has. So let me not do that and just kind of say this has a weird bunch of strange ideas that don't really make any logical sense, but we probably knew that kind of going in, to be fair. Any kind of action sequences are quite poorly handled, to be honest with you. You really don't get any sense of drama in this movie or kind of real genuine threat. And it's kind of laughable if we're being completely honest. I mean, this is one of those films that you would expect to sort of see get just trashed in various kind of like ironic, commentary programs. And I try not to do ironic reviews, to be honest with you. I'd rather give you a straight review. But this film is just so out there, and not just this film, the whole of Donald G. Jackson's kind of like roller skating pantheon of releases are all just like craziness. It still is kind of fun, however. I will say this, it's just a bizarre film that is just stylistically a real mess, but you can't help but be some kind of fascinated if you are into kind of pure schlock and weird science fiction ideas. I kind of do like the bad guy, and he's kind of like, I don't want to spoil it for you, it's the one thing I feel this movie does do a reasonable bait and switch over, but he has a good gimmick, and I quite like the gimmick, and it's just weird and bizarre. And that is the whole thing of this movie, weird and bizarre. So I will give it a 3 out of 10, which I feel is relatively high because it's not a good movie. But it's not without entertainment value in a strange way. So, you know, it's kind of a somewhat long forgotten relic of the 80s, as is the whole kind of rollerblade science fiction movies. I feel that's one of those things that have never really had a comeback in kind of popular culture. Maybe one day, 2022 is all going to be about those sci-fi rollerblades. So it's a 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.